Well, it looks like that we have come full circle now, doesn't it, folks? Seeing as how my first ever response video and political video in general was a response video to Warcorpse666 on abortion, I thought it'd only be appropriate that I respond to this one. Only the difference is that we aren't talking about defund Planned Parenthood specifically, but the entire issue of abortion encompassing the whole issue. And also this time, he's on a new channel, seeing as how his old channel had got destroyed, and I'm on a new format, so let's get right down into this.
This is another thing that me and a lot of conservatives disagree on.
And I have to say that of course that is completely alright, because not all of us are going to agree on 100% everything, but just as long as we respectfully disagree with each other. I mean, I watched this full video myself in whole, and I have to at least give some credit to Warcorpse666 for not referring to conservatives as a bunch of fuckfaces, unlike his last video where he responded to us on the issue of abortion. So, Warcorpse, if you ever come to watch this video, really appreciate it, man. Really appreciate it.
This is one of the things that one of the talking points of conservatives that I've never gotten a straight answer out of any one of them. So I'm going to direct this to the one guy that I think might give me a straight answer, assuming he even sees this, and that is Mr. Ben Shapiro. Dear Mr. Shapiro, let us say, for the sake of argument, that you get your wish and we outlaw abortion. No woman is getting an abortion anymore.
Well, just to get the record straight, not all pro-lifers are against all abortions happening. We just want to generally ban abortions. Like in the case of the life of mother, I'm pretty sure that even Ben Shapiro, like he said in one of his recent videos talking about abortion, that he is for allowing abortion in the case of life of mother. In that one program of his, he was talking about of how Catholics allow abortion in the case of life of mother. And so that is what I am for as well. Some more moderate pro-lifers, like me personally, even though that we think philosophically that life begins at conception, legally we want the viability of the right to life to begin at approximately 6 to 10 weeks after conception.
Then what? What is your plan? I have not heard a single goddamn plan from any conservative about what they're going to do if they get their wish and abortion is gone.
I wish that you elaborated on what you mean by their plan. I mean, are you meaning something like, what is the government solution? Because you know that conservatives, for the most part, are not big on domestic spending and welfare spending. But let me tell you that I prefer, and this is not very libertarian of me to say, but I would prefer that welfare increased exponentially than abortion increased exponentially. Just me personally. But if what you mean by what are we going to do with all the poor and needy children and mothers out there who decide to go ahead and have their children, I prefer that if we had voluntary charity after abortion was generally banned, that we all voluntarily help out these mothers. And in fact, I continually donate to this organization called Kansas Coalition for Life, where they not only protest against abortion, but they also give out voluntary financial support to mothers who are in need of a little bit of support to help raise their child, to give them a little bit more incentive to not abort their children. And here's the link right here for their donation page, and I would encourage everyone and anyone who watches this video to go ahead and just donate a few bucks if you want to help out the mothers that they are trying to convince to not abort their children.
Okay, the birth rate's going to go up, and particularly in areas where the people may already be on welfare. Now, you might think that this is a little cruel for me to say, but I think it's actually a very responsible choice if you can't afford a fucking baby to abort the damn thing before it becomes a person.
Well, obviously, you're talking about the poverty-ridden lifestyle that will follow the mother and the child if she decided to give birth to the child. And really, I have to say that that is not a good metric to go off of by as to the validity of a person's right to life and the validity of a person's right to abort, namely the mother's right to abort. And I'm not meaning to pull an appeal to emotion fallacy right here, but I know plenty of examples of people that I have personally met who have had a life of poverty and abandonment, but they still grew up to be fine adults. And another big example that we know of a person who had a very poverty-ridden lifestyle during his younger years, was Steve Jobs. He was abandoned by his parents, by his real parents, and was raised in a foster home. And yet, look of what he'd grown to be before his death. So we covered the child. But as far as the mother goes, just remember that the mother doesn't always have to keep the child. They can put him up for adoption. And Warcorpse obviously goes talking more about adoption and the foster system a little later here. But even if the mother were to keep the child, which is the situation that we would all prefer, notice that I said earlier that I would not completely rule out welfare, and that there is also always the option of charity to those needy mothers.
And before I get too far into this, let's define what a person is, at least to me. It's when you get your brain.
Well, I guess that's something that you and I agree upon, Warcorpses. By a legal standpoint, we should definitely cap abortion for when that brainwaves are detected. And according to the Endowment for Human Development, a website that is not affiliated with the pro-life movement, by the way, brainwaves are detected as early as 6 weeks.
Primitive brainwaves have been recorded as early as 6 weeks and 2 days.
So by both of our shared logics here, that's when that we should cap abortion, right?
Nor do I think a woman should have the right to abort a fetus 35 seconds before it's born. You have 5 fucking months.
What? But I thought that you said that it should happen when brain starts
5 fucking months.
But brain development is detected as early as 1.5 months after conception.
5 fucking months.
Alright, fine, Warcorpse. 5 fucking months.
Please don't give me the heartbeat bullshit.
And this is another point where you and I agree on, Corpse. I am more of the moderate position of the pro-life movement. After some reconsideration of my beliefs, it is kind of sketchy to be putting it legally at heartbeats.
The birth rate's gonna go up, particularly in areas that they're probably already on government assistance. You're the one sitting there weeping and crying over the fucking little zygote things. What's your plan? How are you gonna pay for them? Now, I don't want my taxes going up, but I'm just fine with abortion.
Corpse is mentioning how pro-lifers don't want to allow people to kill these unborn babies, but at the same time how people like him don't want taxes going up in order to provide more welfare to plausibly needy mothers and their children so they don't starve for being so poor and financially constrained. And pro-choicers in the abortion debate bring up all the time how Republicans and conservatives don't want to allow the deaths of all these fetuses, but at the same time don't want to increase welfare spending. I'm not meaning to strawman Corpse, but I think that's what he's trying to get at. What I say in response to that is that these two things are not morally equivalent. I've already said that I won't rule out welfare, but even if we generally banned abortion without increasing welfare spending to compensate for the higher amount of mouths to feed, there is a big difference between allowing somebody to die and allowing somebody to kill. People do not have a right to someone else's help. People are not rightfully, much less should they be legally, obligated to someone else's assistance and their food. What people do have a right to is the most sacred of human rights, and that is the right to life, unless of course they themselves have invaded someone else's right to life. Therefore their right to life becomes null and void, as they are no longer innocent. But until then, though, they have a right to life, and nobody is to invade that right to life. That includes for unborn fetuses, and when we decide to consider them as humans viable for the right to life.
What about the moms who don't want kids? What about the parents who don't want children? Who aren't going to take care of them? Who aren't going to love them?
Well, I can tell you certainly what their decision should be. They should just have safer sex, or decide to not have sex entirely. And before you go mentioning sex education, I am not entirely against sex education, and more importantly, sex prevention education.
Boy, that kid's gonna have a real great upbringing in that home.
So abusive parents. Abusive parents is also a bad metric to go off of to say that abortion is justified, because we have cases of abusive parents who did want children, but then they go well, abusing their own children. And in those circumstances, when we find pedophiles or sexual harassing dads or even moms or whatnot, we do not go pondering back on the times and thinking, maybe these parents should have just had an abortion in the first place. No, what we do have for a solution in those types of cases is that we just take the kids away from the parents. And if you are going to bring up the cases of abusive parents, I say that we take on that circumstance as it comes, not kill off the innocent life, just to help them avoid all the harshness and trials of life entirely.
Or are we going to bring back the orphanage system, which gave us such colorful characters?
I do not know all the nuanced differences between the orphanage and the foster care system, but because I think that they are roughly the same, I'm just going to lump together all the statements that Warcorpse makes in this video about the orphanage and the foster care system all together right now.
Like, seriously, and who's going to pay for all the orphanages? Great! Where are we going to get the money for that? The mom doesn't want to take care of it. The dad doesn't want it. What is your solution? Adoption? There's not enough people to adopt the kids that need adopting now! The foster system? That's more broken than fucking Courtney Love's brain!
I first want to outline as well that I haven't heard a single conservative, much less have myself, ever said that we should bring back the orphanage system. I've just heard them all say put them up for adoption, and as far as where we would get the money from if we were to bring back the orphanage system, let's put reforms in the rest of the welfare system so that we do not go providing for all the chronically, purposefully lazy people out there. Make sure that they do not get luxury foods like steak and lobster and whatnot, something that Briley Dennis likes to complain about, by the way. To just sum up the whole issue of the horrors that these unborn babies might have to face in life, I just have to say generally to that, let them determine how they will conquer life, instead of just not even giving them the chance to conquer life. I mean, I've already said earlier in this video that I've mentioned a couple of anecdotes of people I personally met who said that they did not have any parents and were raised in the foster care system, but they still grew to be upstanding adults. And one of them even, who was oddly enough a pro-choicer as well, I asked him, do you wish that you were never born, that you were aborted? And he said no. And again, I'm not meaning to pull an appeal to emotion fallacy, but still, it brings up the question, is it really logically sound? Is it really morally and naturally sound that we determine for all these unborn babies that you do not deserve to suffer the horrors of life, and so therefore we won't even give you the chance to face them yourself and possibly even conquer them to become an upstanding adult and person yourself?
Furthermore, you constantly talk about individual freedom and the freedom to do whatever you want. Well, I'm sorry, but what fucking right do you have to tell a woman that she has to do this?
What fucking right does an abortion surgeon or the pregnant mother have to end the life of the unborn human inside her?
Literally what you're saying is, if you want to outlaw abortion, you are literally telling a woman she has no right over her body for 9 months.
No, what we are saying is that she and the abortion surgeon do not have the right to kill the unborn human inside of her. And really, pro-lifers do not want anything to do with a woman's bodily autonomy. And if there was a way that we could absolutely avoid invading the woman's bodily autonomy while at the same time preserving the right to human life that the unborn human has, then trust me, we would take it. But unfortunately, that is not how the biology and nature of pregnancy works. And so that is, in one way, that human rights become pretty jaded, is when you have one conflicting with the other. Like, for example, the right to bodily autonomy versus the right to life. And in this case, I have to say that because these unborn humans did not do anything wrong, then the right to life overrules the right to bodily autonomy.
What's better? Aborting something that could at one point be human, who never achieved consciousness, or a dead 17-year-old girl in an alleyway with a coat hanger up her twat?
What I think is best is that we don't legally allow either of these circumstances. Now, obviously, we will not be able to physically prevent every single pregnant woman from aborting her own child by performing her own abortion, but it is morally reprehensible when a country sanctions for murder to allow to happen.
Also, what happens if there is a medical emergency and you can only save one? The fetus, which is, let's say, viable at this point, or the mom. I know which one the medical community picks. You should too.
I do not know of how many pro-lifers that Warcorpse has met in person or knows of their beliefs, but he should know by now that most pro-lifers are for abortion or for allowing it in the cases of life of mother.
Also, it's really hypocritical of you because you've said repeatedly that you're a deeply religious person, so I assume that if you live a good life, then you're going to go to heaven. Now, the babies that are aborted, I assume, would have a soul, right? So they're going to end up in paradise with skipping over this crap hole.
How the flying fuck is it hypocritical for a person to have deep religious beliefs and also believe that murder is wrong and therefore it shouldn't happen? What, would it really be intellectually honest and consistent if a religious person who believes in a heavenly afterlife were to allow the killing of innocent unborn humans? I mean, by that logic, we can also extend it to newborns as well. Would it be intellectually honest for religious people to be for allowing the killing of newborns as well?
Or can you kindly tell me when in the flippin' flying hell that when we get our soul, at what point?
Okay, he starts throwing around a whole bunch of red herrings on religion, and I'm just going to edit over a whole bunch of them because we are talking about specifically abortion, not religion and theology. However, I will sum up a lot of his arguments on religion that I do not know when the soul is given to us exactly, Corpse, to be quite honest.
And also, Ben, you love the Constitution, so do I. Well, we can't make laws based on personal religious beliefs. What in the hell is the argument you have against abortion outside of your morality that you get from your religion?
Well, first off, I'd like you to show me the clip of where Ben Shapiro goes citing the Torah or the Bible as a source of authority on the issue of abortion. And secondly, I know that there are a whole bunch of pro-life demonstrators that go saying, "Thou shalt not murder," as they are protesting against abortion. But there is a huge swath of us pro-lifers who base our morality on abortion off of the fact that it is human murder, that we think that it is murder of a human being. And even secularists can agree that murder is wrong.
All of you tell me that God has a plan. How do you know the abortion wasn't in the plan?
How do you know it is not in his plan for us to prevent the abortion? I do not see of what the relevancy is in analyzing the rhetoricals of what is God's plan when it comes to preventing human murder.
But finally, at the end of the day, if you believe everyone can do whatever they want, then you can't stand in the way of an abortion. Unless you believe that a woman's rights end where a fetus begins.
Well, we apply the logic of my rights end where your rights begin when it comes to people who are already born. It's just a question of when do we consider a fetus, at what point in the pregnancy do we consider them to be viable to the same right to life as those of us who are born.
And also, where did we get life is sacred, Ben? Where did we get it? I can tell you where we got it. We made it up. Life's sacred? Who said so, God? He's one of the leading causes of death in the Bible.
Again, another red herring on religion, and I will respond to this by saying I do not base all of my morality on abortion off of religion. Whether what is sacred about life and whatever atheists or anti-theists want to argue about God being immoral himself, supposedly, that is a different issue entirely. But what I will say in response to this is whether you are religious or you are a secularist, what we all have in common is that we believe that murder is wrong and that everybody has a right to life. I mean, unless you're a complete and utter psychopath. But for all of us who believe in the right to life, us pro-lifers just want to extend that to all the unborn.
The death penalty. You conservatives love it. well, at what point does this person's life is no longer sacred because he did this, but this thing, which is not even human yet, their life is sacred?
Another false moral equivalency. Now, before I get started, I just want to outline that zygotes without brains, even though technically they are actually human, that technically they aren't viable to the same right to life as those of us who actually do have brains and brain activity. But that said, people like to draw the moral equivalency that we are against murder when it comes to abortion, but we are for killing when it comes to the death penalty. And Warcorpse, he by the way kind of self-defeated his own argument when he said, this person did this. Well, guess what? It is because this person did this why we say that they are viable to the death penalty, because they invaded somebody else's right to life by killing them, or even a serial rapist, for example. Whereas a fetus did not do anything wrong, and yet they get punished with the same thing as that said criminal. So no, the death penalty and abortion, they are not moral equivalencies. And so, if you have gotten through this entire video responding to Warcorpse, just for the record, I am a longtime fan of Warcorpse666, or otherwise known as nowadays, Dave Nordahl. And Warcorpse, to you, I hope that my responses to your video have been sufficient as far as what our plans might be. And if you want like a more elaborate response as to what your questions might be, I'd be more than willing to have a discussion on these issues, and maybe even a little bit on religion. And also at the same time, we can talk about how we have our differences with Owen McDonald. To all my subscribers, comment down below of how you like the new format and the new avatar and whatnot. And if you're new to my channel and you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.